Hey, it's Charlie. We're back. Another segment here of kind of talking about the consultant's journey. We're exploring a specific case study, a church in Auburn, a smaller congregation, and today we're talking about working alongside to implement change. Working alongside to implement change. And so, one of the authors that we've mentioned before, Bellman, mentions mentions the term change agent and says, well, that's a little bit of consulting jargon, but I think that we really do see the consultant come in and create change within the organization. And one of the things that Bellman will say here is that organizations change slowly. What I think will require 3 years, they think might take a year, and it actually takes 5 years. We all have a lot to learn. And I think this is especially true in smaller nonprofits and especially true in smaller churches as far as the amount of time that it takes to change. You even look at staff hiring, the hiring of a new pastor, that the boards move very slowly, that they're meeting every other week even during crisis, or once a week during crisis mode, when they don't have a senior pastor in leadership. And it's funny because I have other pastor friends and they ask about getting hired and they're like, man, I submitted a resume and haven't heard anything back for 2 months. And I'm like, well, they probably only had one meeting since your resume came in. And so smaller organizations, everything's just moving slower. There's not the same thing as regular business where you'd have a daily person going through, picking up mail, evaluating what's coming in, passing it along to a superior, be able to look at your resume and get back with you and let you know where they are in the process. Everything in the church happens much slower. And of course, we've talked about the difficulty of change, resistance to change, immunity to change, to use the Kagan and Leahy term, but change happens slow, and I'd say especially slower in the church. And yet we look at the consultant as a change agent or a person coming in hoping to create change. Once again, when we talk about this section, I want to talk about working alongside to implement change. So a guide walking along with someone. You think about a guide on a hiking expedition, rafting expedition. They're there alongside. They know the route. They've gone there before, and they're helping these people have their own adventure. And through that, there's a change in the relationship for both the guide and the client in this case. So this is, once again, not a medical model that's not kind of expert-oriented. And for me, I'm not coming in and saying, hey, this is exactly what you need to do. This is the change, and I'm going to point out your major flaws, and then I'm going to fix them for you. And then I'm going to bill you a bunch and send you on your way. But rather, I'm coming in as a coach, trying to help out. Another interesting resource I want to point you to, this is from January 2009 Harvard Business Review, and it talks about the differences between consulting and coaching and therapy, and then how there's some overlap there. And so I see myself kind of in the overlap between the consultant and the coach. So the consultant paid to come up with answers. I think that's true in some consulting models, not in all. Focuses on organizational performances, strives for objectivity, provides quantitative analysis of problems. Versus the coach, which is going to overlap with that consultant as far as advising individual leaders on business matters, paid by the company, and then coaching in the matter of focusing on the future, helps executive discover their own path. So in this case, I'm not working with an executive, working with an organization, and yet at the same time, I see myself as that guide, as that coach, coming alongside. So what happened, just to kind of give you a little update, emailed them the report. So they got the report 2 weeks before our meeting together, and then met with the entire board again. This time had 10 of the 12. So once again, this idea with 12 has been very difficult to get 12 people together. And so this time 2 different people were out. So it's a whole kind of new set. Organizational dynamics and group dynamics didn't change really that much, but you did have some people that weren't there the first time that were there this time, and some people there the first time that weren't there this time. So anyhow, met with the entire board, emailed them the report to everybody 2 weeks prior to that, so they had time to look through it and digest it. And then we walked through that report, my findings about the church, about the governance, about how it plays in with the history, about people's perceptions of what the board does and what they don't do, how they're effective, how the structures flawed and all that sort of stuff. So I walked them through that, and the primary purpose for me of doing that is that I wanted them to take ownership of it, to have a stake in it, to see it for themselves. When I was looking at this, I originally thought that they might need when I was offering them and kind of contracting and talked to them, I said, hey, if necessary, and you guys do make a bylaw change, and that was one of the things, one of my action points for them, one of my recommendations was you need to have your bylaws changed to reflect a smaller board. And so we talked about the advantages and disadvantages of large boards versus small boards, and the advantage that a small board would offer them. And you don't want to go too small. So some of them is like, well, hey, why not have 5 or 3? And to me, I'm able to offer the advice as a guide, not as an expert, but as a guide who's done and current on the literature and current in experiences and talking with other churches, that hey, you want to have some diversity on that board. So 125 member church, and you narrow it down to 3 or 5, you're going to lose some of that. And a lot of times, most of those people are there's intimate relationships and connections there. Sometimes there's family connections, and most bylaws make provisions to not have dual family members on a board, but the 7 gives you enough diversity among talents and representative of the congregation that I don't think you'd get out of 3 or 5. So anyhow, I walked them through my report at this meeting, and then one of the things I said is, hey, if need be, I'd be willing to come back if you make a bylaw change. So in order for them to make a bylaw change, proposed business meeting has to be posted 2 weeks prior to the real business meeting, and the change has to be posted, and then they can discuss it at the business meeting. I said, hey, if you need me to come in for that, I'd be willing to do that. I'm not going to charge extra. I'll show up and answer any questions or whatever. So it was interesting because I thought, well, hey, I'll go and hang out and get to see everyone in the church again. But at this meeting between the me and the board here, they really owned the issue. They owned the issue, and they really internalized it. So we talked about that and talking about kind of the change process, and they owned it, and they said, hey, you know what? I don't think we really need you. And so I heard that, and I felt kind of both good and bad, right? So like, everyone wants to be needed, but in this case, like, it's great that they don't need me, because that means that they internalize the change. So I worked alongside of the board, discussed a problem with them, gave them some options, gave them some feedback from that interaction between what they saw in my report and what they thought was critical for the church as a whole, and then offered my services free of charge to say, if you need me to come back. And I said, you know what, I think we as a board understand the need, we see the need, everyone's on board with this, and so we think that needs even internalized in the congregation. So we don't think we'll need backup. We'll let you know after the church-wide business meeting and how it goes. If it doesn't work out, maybe we'll table it and bring you back, but we really don't think we need you. And so, like I said, that was rewarding for me as a consultant, and kind of working yourself out of a job, but which I think is good and healthy, right? Because we have those coaches, those people in our lives that kind of come along with us for a time, and then we're released to go out on our own, and hopefully we internalize that change and make that next jump in our levels of leadership and influence with other people. So anyhow, that was a little bit about working alongside to implement change. Looking forward to hearing some of your stories on it as well, as we explore the journey of a consultant, or at least one consultant.